Hey, welcome everybody to this Friday edition of the One-on-One Show. Real Talk with the One-on-One Show, brought to you by the Delatour Law Firm. Delatour Law Firm is centrally located at 135 Central Boulevard, Suite 445 in Orlando, Florida. This is Juan Delatour, and I'm here today to discuss the news and bring up some summary of what's been going on here around the Delatour Law Firm. It's been a great month for our clients here at the Delatour Law Firm. We got two dismissals in the from the state attorney's office on two separate cases, one involving possession of marijuana under 20 grams. The interesting part of that case was that when it was filed, there was no facts attached to the report from the law enforcement. Law enforcement had, by rule, had to amend that report. It wasn't amended. The 90 days to be brought to trial, which is what's called speedy trial. Speedy trial in Florida for misdemeanors is 90 days. You have to be brought to trial prior to the 90-day period, unless that is waived. And in this particular case, the time period expired. No amendments were filed. The state attorney's office had no choice but to basically drop the case. And another case this month that was really exciting for us was representing a U.S. combat veteran who suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And in that case, the law enforcement basically found they charged him with resisting without violence because he wasn't obeying an officer's command. Facts in this case showed that our client had been attacked by someone else, and law enforcement arrived to break up the fight, and that given his PTSD, he basically could not hear the commands, and therefore it was an impossibility that he would comply with law enforcement commands. It was really great to have the state attorney agree with our position. They also announced a dismissal in that case. In great news in our immigration practice, we had a client pick up their resident card. That's always a great feeling when they come by the office to pick up their paperwork, finally approved after so many years. She applied originally in 2001 with another firm and qualified under what's called the 245I waiver, which basically dating back to 2001, if you had filed an I-130 application prior to April 30th of that year, 2001, pay a $1,000 fine, and basically your illegal entry into the United States could be waived. An interesting topic to bring up because we might have to discuss immigration reform real soon with everything that's going on, and that may be something that should be discussed, whether or not that is a means to generate revenue for the U.S. government by having people paying fines, and at the same time also have these individuals that have entered illegally fix their situation. So I think those are some interesting topics to discuss. Please leave your comments below if you agree, disagree, want to suggest maybe where we should go with the future of immigration law. And speaking of which, some very, very serious constitutional topics this week. ISIS bride, Hoda Muthana, 24 years old, University of Alabama student that basically left the United States and joined ISIS in Syria, and now seeks re-entry to the United States. Now, Hoda was born inside the United States. Her parents were here on mission. Her parents were here on mission to the United Nations. Her mother was a legal permanent resident, and her dad was here on diplomatic status. The 14th Amendment basically provides that individuals born inside the United States have a birthright of citizenship. So Hoda is a birth citizen, different from being naturalized. When you're naturalized, you were born somewhere outside of the United States, and then you file an application to become a U.S. citizen, and you're then naturalized. But in this particular case, Hoda was born inside the United States. The president has instructed legal counsel and the State Department's office to send a letter to the UK, where Hoda is currently held up, basically stating that she's persona non grata to the United States. She's not welcome in the United States due to the fact that she joined ISIS. That brings up some very interesting topics that pertain not only to the Constitution of the United States, but also to the criminality of the actions that she has committed. Particularly, she joined ISIS. ISIS being, an enemy of the state, it is a treasonous act. But Hoda is saying that she wants to come back to the United States, face consequences for her actions. I guess she's having second thoughts. She now has a child. She wants her child to be raised in the United States. Now, the fact here is she's a citizen. She can come back. The other fact here is that she did commit a crime. And that crime should be prosecuted. Typically, when individuals are outside the United States, are either absconding from criminal charges or running away under fugitive status from criminal charges, or just committed a crime, haven't been charged yet, but are running from the consequences. Typically, those people with proper warrants are then apprehended at the border or at a port of inspection, which is the airport in this case. Right when they arrive, they would be detained. It seems like the proper thing to do here is that Hoda is availing herself, saying, I'm coming back to the United States. I've dealt with this situation personally here. The state attorney's office had a warrant out for a client that was absconding for over 12 years, and basically we were able to negotiate their surrender. And that person, the state attorney's office, contacts the U.S. Embassy. The U.S. Embassy then has a notification, even grants a pass if the passport's expired or whatnot, even grants a pass to that individual to basically board a plane to the United States. And in that particular case, that person boarded the plane, came to the United States, and upon arriving to the United States, was taken into custody at the airport, was not even permitted to clear customs or pass immigration. They knew that that person would be there. Law enforcement, U.S. Marshals were there at the port of inspection waiting. It seems like to me, having already dealt with a case similar to this, that would be the proper thing to do in Hoda's case. Permit her to arrive to the United States, take her into custody, and have a federal judge grant that warrant so she can be taken into custody lawfully, and also bring her forth on charges that apply in this case, which I'm sure will involve some treason and potentially other charges under federal statutes. Speaking of other cases in the news, the case of Empire star Jussie Smollett, it turns out that he made up some false allegations. Similarly, last week we were talking about on this show was the most complicated show, the most difficult show I'd ever had to do. There was a scare at my son's school. I'm not going to get too deep into what happened, but there was there was a boy that cried wolf, basically, and that caused the entire school to be evacuated. And unfortunately, a lot of people were worried and scared, and multiple units. And if I remember correctly, the estimate was about at least 20 Orange County Sheriff units had responded. There was a bomb squad team on site. There was a SWAT team on site. All kinds of helicopters in the air, and all the kids had to be evacuated from the school. And that was the negative consequence of one person, just one person, making a false accusation in this case. Which begs the question about how false accusations should be treated by the law. In Jussie's case, he's been charged with a felony. Is that a felony in this particular case, if my reading was correct, was punishable by 1 to 3 years in the particular state where he's being charged in. In the state of Florida, if you're charged with a third-degree felony, you can be sentenced to prison up to 5 years, depending on what happened, what the factual circumstances are, and what you end up scoring at the end of the day if you're charged with that type of criminal offense. But really begs the question about the effect of making these types of false accusations. It's like crying fire in the middle of a crowded movie theater. It's dangerous. These things have an effect on people. What should the prosecution, to what extent should they go to potentially, I don't know, even make an example of Mr. Smollett for making these type of false accusations? I mean, he was not only accused, not only accusing people of having violently beat him, but he accused people of violently beat him as a result of a hate crime, and that those individuals had allegedly used all types of negative slurs. That really create, the true victims of that, I think, are the people that are really affected by these types of situations. It also breaks the question of, sexual assault cases where after many years, defendants are acquitted. uh, with new evidence or DNA evidence resulting in the fact that that person had originally made up a false accusation about a criminal defendant charged with sexual assault. Um, those consequences have real consequences on these individuals that are accused of these crimes. So what about the accuser making the false crime? What about that, that child or that boy that makes a claim that results in the evacuation of a school, results in a real life situation where, uh, law enforcement has to respond, SWAT teams are out, and et cetera, et cetera. What about those things? Same thing with Jussie. What are we, what should be the extent of the consequences for Jussie Smollett, and what negative uh, accusations he's made? What should be the consequences on that? I welcome all of your comments and welcome all your suggestions. Also, feel free to suggest anything that you want to hear or to talk about here on the show. We're looking forward to having some guests with us real soon. This has been our third show of the year, and we're basically relaunching and reconceptualizing everything. I'd like to thank Rick Garcia from Havoc Media Group. He's our new prediction manager, right here on site, helping me put this show together for you guys. So anyhow, this has been the one-on-one show, Real Talk with Juan De La Torre. You can visit us at www.delatorrelaw.com. You can call us at 407-733-0640. You can friend us on Facebook. You can add us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Twitter, and you can look up past shows of this one-on-one with me on YouTube. So thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you next week.